better serve you. Thank you for the blessings in our lives. We are truly blessed by your bounty, your mercy, and your grace. We pray for forgiveness of our sins and the strength to overcome our weaknesses. Give us the strength to do your bidding. Only you can heal this broken world. Please guide us in your wisdom and show us your ways so that we may serve your purpose and make this world, our nation, and the great state of West Virginia a better place. In the precious name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will you please stand with me and recite the pledge to our country? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, March 11th, 2021. The Senate met at 11:01 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
The Senator from Marshall requests unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and the Journal be approved. Is there objection? The chair hears none. Further reading of the Journal is dispensed with and the Journal is approved. Introduction of guests. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it is your pleasure and mine to introduce our doc of the day. In the rear of the chamber with us, we have Dr. Ben Perrin from Huntington, West Virginia. He's currently finishing up his third year at Marshall University in Family Medicine. He's been here in Huntington for 7 years. We're trying to convince him to stay and move up here from Alabama. If you wouldn't mind standing, let the Senate give him a warm welcome.
Are there further introductions? Senator from Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have some very important guests in the North Gallery. My children are here visiting today, so if the Senate would please welcome my 13-year-old son, Rhett, my 8-year-old daughter, and Easton, and my 4-year-old daughter, Chesney, to the Senate today. They're excited to be here.
Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of House Bill 2598, altering the definition of an above-ground storage tank.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2671 relating to financial exploitation of elderly persons, protected persons, or incapacitated adults.
The bill will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2722 prohibiting the use of Class B firefighting foam for testing purposes if the foam contains a certain class of fluorinated organic chemicals.
The bill will be received and referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
House Bill 2852 relating to distribution of the allowance for increased enrollment.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 28, creating Tim Tebow Act, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas Rucker, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 297, relating generally to modernizing Board of Treasury investments, and reports back a committee substitute for same, and Senate Bill 502, providing lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping license to residents and adopted children under 15, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 335, making Promise Scholarships available for students at accredited community and technical college, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas Rucker, Chair.
The report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 388, creating Office of Quality Assurance and Evaluation within DHHR, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
The report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 391 relating to study of child protective services and foster care workforce, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 431 relating to school attendance notification requirements to DMV, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas Rucker, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2008, amending requirements for licensure relating to elevator mechanics, crane operators, HVAC electricians, and plumbers, and has amended same and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2013 relating to the Hope Scholarship Program, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2616, amend the reporting to the governor and the legislature to have information continuously available on the Office of Health Facility Licensure and Certification's website, and has amended same and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
The report will be received. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 633 through Senate Bill 640 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
Senior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill 633 through Senate Bill 640 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? The chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 25 by Senators Baldwin and Woodrum, naming the McClintock Family Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 23, naming the United States Marine Corps Corporal Guy Maywood Edwards Memorial Bridge.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 24, naming the U.S. Navy Specialist 1 Paul McHugh Bridge.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Resolution 19, reaffirming sister state partnership between West Virginia and Taiwan.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its passage.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will read the bill, the resolution.
Senate Resolution 19, reaffirming the sister state partnership between the state of West Virginia and Taiwan.
Question is on adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? Roll call is demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. Senator, will be easy for one moment. Senate will come back to order. Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Roll call has been demanded. Demand is sustained. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On the question of this resolution, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those having voted, I declare the resolution adopted. Bills on third reading.
Engrossed Senate Bill 437, extending contingent increase of tax rate on certain eligible acute care hospitals. Third reading of the bill.
The question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 437, and just to remind the members, this bill is strikingly similar to a bill which was passed earlier this session. This bill continues a program to target funding to West Virginia hospitals. The bill would increase Medicaid payments for hospitals by making those payments closer to what Medicare would pay for the same service. The program was put in place to comply with federal supplemental payment initiatives under Medicaid. The federal rules outline the types of Medicaid payment arrangements that West Virginia may use to direct managed care expenditures. Like its companion bill, this program is set to expire on June 30th, 2021. The changes made would eliminate the sunset date, making the tax effective until further action is taken by the legislature. I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, and not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
The Senior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 493, issuing license suspensions to insurance producers and adjusters who fail to meet CE requirements.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be committed to the Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed Senate Bill 494, authorizing transfer of monies from Insurance Commission Fund to Workers' Compensation Old Fund. Third reading of the bill.
The question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Mr. President, this bill allows the Insurance Commissioner to transfer special revenue monies contained in the Insurance Commission Fund to the Workers' Compensation Old Fund during the year where a deficit balance existed in the old fund for the prior fiscal year. A similar bill passed the Senate last year unanimously. The House of Delegates amended that bill to only allow a transfer for fiscal years 2019 and 2020. The governor signed that bill. This bill will allow such a transfer for the next 3 fiscal years if the commissioner determines that a deficit balance exists. The passage of the bill would ensure that the Insurance Commission could maintain the integrity of the old fund without having to ask the legislature for additional revenue resources. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question is before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. The clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Tarr moved to amend the title of the bill.
The question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say yea. Those opposed will say nay. Right. Say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 496 relating to punishment for second or third degree felony. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 496 amends a single section of our state code. It's Chapter 61, Article 11, Section 18, and it is the West Virginia recidivist statute. This is the statute that provides enhanced punishments for people who are convicted of a felony when they have prior felonies. And the legislature did a substantial rewrite of this section a year or two ago. The amendment in this bill would add the words "or substantially similar." So the predicate for enhancement under the law is a person that's been previously convicted of a particularized offense in West Virginia. The West Virginia predicate offenses are listed, or current law says, are convicted in any other state for an offense which has the same elements. And this would add the words "or substantially similar," so to read the same or substantially similar elements. And so the whole point of this is just to recognize that some states may use different words than we do to mean the same thing. For instance, you see the words in various state codes around the country: larceny, theft, stealing, all mean the same thing. All mean the same thing. In our law, we have as a predicate offense, Mr. President, DUI causing death. But in other states, they refer to that perhaps as driving while intoxicated causing death. So the words are substantially similar. The elements are substantially similar. They mean the same thing, even if the words are not exact. The adoption, the enactment of this bill would allow those offenses to be counted and used in West Virginia as enhancing tools to enhance a person's sentence who has prior felonies. Be happy to try to answer questions. Urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine to ascertain the results. On this question, there's 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present in voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 514, providing criteria for Natural Resource Commission appointment and compensation. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 514 overhauls the Natural Resource Commission by requiring a more equal geographic distribution of commissioners, reducing the length of their terms, and imposing term limits. To give a little bit of history on the commission, it was first established in 1933, and it had four members at the time. Members are appointed for 7-year terms by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. 1 member shall be from each congressional district and the remainder from the state at large. The proposed committee substitute amends the existing law in the following ways. It requires that 1 member must be selected from each of the 6 natural resources districts. The remaining member will come from the state at large and shall be appointed to provide the broadest geographic distribution possible. It changes the length of terms to be served. These commissioners shall serve an initial term of 4 years, 2 shall serve 3-year terms, and 2 shall serve terms of 2 years, and thereafter terms will be for a period of 4 years. It imposes term limits. Commissioners may not serve more than 2 consecutive years or 2 consecutive terms. And the technical and stylistic changes have been made to make the section more clear and concise. Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the chairman yield, please?
Will the senator yield? The senator yields.
Yes.
Senator, what happens to the people that are currently on these Natural Resource Commission? People that have been, appointed and with the advice and consent of the governor, and they're still serving out their term. Does this start from this point on, or does it go back and potentially take off these people that have been appointed and confirmed?
Okay. It basically removes them, but they're eligible to be reappointed.
So we're going to just basically clean slate everybody, go back to not have any institutional memory of what's going on with the commission. We could potentially have a whole brand new set of commissioners. Is that correct?
The governor, with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint 7 members for the following terms beginning July 1, 2021. So all 7 existing commissioners will be appointed, 3 for a term of 4 years, 2 for a term of 3 years, and 2 for a term of 2 years. And then as their terms expire, then they would be eligible, if they're reappointed, to serve a 4-year term.
Okay, so the current commissioners then will be continued forward. Is that what you just told me?
Yes, if they're appointed by the governor and approved by the Senate, then they would go, yes.
I guess the question I have, we're defining a time now in March 2021. We have these commissioners, existing commissioners, that have been appointed in the past and confirmed by this Senate. Now, the question I have is, all of a sudden, are all those people going to be off the commission unless the governor reappoints them starting now?
Well, they've always served, haven't they? I'm sorry? They've always been serving to the governor.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, the simple answer to his question is yes. That it is a clean slate, but we will have continuity about the reappointments.
Yes, that would be correct.
So the governor, so are there any rules? And maybe will the senator from Oregon yield? Judiciary chairman.
Will the senator from Oregon yield? The senator yields.
Yeah, the question I have is that the rules of the legislature, that a person confirmed to a position cannot be removed from that position except for gross misconduct until their term expires. And again, in other words, the commission members that have been confirmed cannot be removed until their term expires. What's your thoughts on this? We're basically doing away with that.
What may I ask is the senator reading from? What was that you just read to me?
That was just a question from various constituents.
I apologize. This is not a question on which I've done any specific research, so I don't know. I guess as a general proposition, what I would say is, unless there's some constitutional inhibition, then if it's a statute that says person can't be removed except for delineated causes, that could be changed by statute.
Right. But again, this is still the Natural Resource Commission. It's got members in good standing going forward, and then all of a sudden, this bill is going to say, you people that have been appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate, are potentially no longer members of the Natural Resource Commission. We're not naming a new commission, and that without cause is the way I interpret this and what I've heard from the senator from Upshur.
That I'll say that's consistent with the explanation I've heard. The bill was not examined in the Judiciary Committee, so I would defer to the chairman of the committee which handled the bill and the committee counsel as to the application of those provisions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak to the bill.
Do you want to speak to the amendment or speak to the bill?
Speak to the bill.
Okay, Senator from Boone, recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you. Again, I'm for many concepts of this bill. The shorter time, the term limits, getting new blood into the system is good. But my concern is that we have a good functioning Natural Resource Commission, and we have the potential here to just basically erase that for no good reason. It just seems to me that this ought to be going forward and not reaching back and clawing back those people that have been appointed, worked hard, done their job, their term's not up yet, and yet we're going to yank the rug out from under them. So based on that, I'm a no vote on this. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in strong support of this bill. It's been a long time coming. I think we're getting confused here. What this is a commission that is made up of West Virginia citizens, sportsmen. It's probably the most sought after position, commission or board in the state. And some of these members have been on there for over 30 years. And I realize several people in this body and the body across the hall have friends on this commission. And, I understand that. I know several on the commission also, but it goes further than that. Right now, we're in, they're picked from congressional districts, which we only have 3 congressional districts, and in jeopardy of losing one of those. So it could be possible that a majority of these members could be from one part of the state. That bill, or this bill here, addresses that problem. And also, by putting the term limits on there, it opens it up for more people to be able to serve. Because like I said, these are citizens that want to serve on this board. Right now, like we don't have any minorities on this board. And if this board continues to stay locked like it is, you cannot advance forward and, put minorities on this board because these positions very seldom ever come open. So the term limit is going to be more fair to the citizens of West Virginia to have a chance, the sportsmen and women in this state, to be able to serve on this board. Now, these aren't experts, maybe in their own mind, some of them, I don't know. But they're not wildlife biologists, fish biologists like that. They're everyday sportsmen, citizens of the state of West Virginia. And all this does is open it up for more people to have the opportunity to serve on this commission across the state. What they do, they go around the state 4 times a year for commission meetings and take concerns and complaints from sportsmen and citizens across the state. It's not like we're putting people out of job. They get paid very little for this. They get paid nothing for it. In fact, they just get their travel and expenses paid and things like that. So I don't know why so many people are pushing back against this when I think it's a good way to move our state forward with our natural resources and give everybody some skin in the game. So for those reasons, I strongly support Senate Bill 514. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Woelfel. Excuse me. Senator from Cabell.
Come on now. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this piece of legislation. As we move forward with tourism being one of our primary ways to attract new residents and to retain our young people here, we need our DNR to be more nimble. We need flexibility. We need term limits. One of the gentlemen that spoke against the bill in our committee, he's been on there almost 14 years. He wants his buddy to get another 7 years, and I appreciate their service to the state, serving on this board. But there are multiple ways through fishing and other outdoor activities that our state needs to move in different directions. So the flexibility that this bill would provide and the turnover in perspective by its members, I think, is a really positive thing to move our state forward. So I encourage us to vote yes.
Further discussion before I recognize the senator from Upshur to close. Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Currently, we have 6 DNR districts in West Virginia. 2 of those districts, number 3 and number 6, which they encompass from Parkersburg clear to Franklin, they don't have a commissioner representing them. We have 2 commissioners in District 1, 2 commissioners in District 2, and 2 commissioners in District 5. Now, currently, they serve by congressional districts, but something that we fail to remember is when we redistrict, we probably will lose one of those congressional districts. So there'll be 2 appointed to 2 congressional districts, and then the other 5 will serve at large for the commission. The division fulfills the statutory requirement of holding sectional meetings throughout the 6 DNR districts for the purpose of giving interested persons in the various parts of the state an opportunity to be heard concerning open seasons for their respective areas, and reports the meeting results to the Natural Resource Commission prior to the commission setting seasons and bag limits. This is well overdue. We can have representation, which is going to cover all 6 districts in the state, and I urge passage.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 30 yeas, 3 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? The chair hears none. On this question, 30 yeas, 3 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House. Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 303, creating Local Government Labor and Consumer Marketing Regulatory Limitation Act.
Are there amendments to the bill? Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lie over 1 day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 346, authorizing DMV use electronic means when providing notice for licensees and vehicle owners. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 472, updating criteria for regulating certain occupations and professions. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 523, correcting improper code references, second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 529, correcting improper citation relating to DMV registration, second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 621, relating to non-compete covenants between certain healthcare practitioners.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2006, relating to the West Virginia Contractor Licensing Act.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lie over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2011, eliminating anytime requirements for part-time personnel to work during a working year, second reading of the bill.
Is there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Government Organization moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2011 codifies Executive Order 5420, which removed the 1,000-hour cap on the exemption from classified service for temporary employees. The Strike and Insert Amendment adds an exemption for temporary employees in state parks, forest, and recreational areas. That exemption was added at the request of the DNR. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge adoption of the amendment.
2006 goes to 211. Is there discussion?
Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the Committee on Government Organization. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be advanced to third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2263, update the regulation of pharmacy benefit managers, second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Health and Human Resources moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendments in lieu of having them read, and all amendments be considered as one.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Marshall.
Mr. President, the first amendment is a strike and insert amendment, and what it does is, let's see here, I don't have my thing's fogging up.
Changes related to pharmacy benefits and reporting requirements.
This strike and insert amendment, it's a regulation of pharmacy benefits managers, amends the reporting requirements of the pharmacy benefit managers related to public employees, insurance agencies, expanding scope, defining terms, regulating the reimbursements of pharmacy benefit managers, and addressing network adequacy. It also provides an effective date requiring the filing of certain methodologies utilizing the pharmacy benefit managers, prohibiting certain practices by pharmacy benefit managers, providing consumer choice for pharmacies, setting guidelines for pharmacy benefit plans, and requiring rebates to be passed on to the health plan, which includes health plan reporting of how they use those benefits to decrease the cost of insurance to the premiums and copays to the patients. This also requires insurance commissioners to consider further information in reporting and reviewing insurance rates. Mr. President, I urge passage of the strike and insert amendment. There is a further amendment that...
The clerk has an amendment to the amendment.
Okay.
Senator Maroney moved to amend the Health and Human Resources Committee amendment on page 16, section 9.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you. Sorry for getting ahead of the clerk. Mr. President, I request unanimous consent that the amendment.
Unanimous consent to explain the amendment to the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment to the amendment changes the first amendment. The amendment changes the amendment or changes the word provisional to professional to correct a typographical error with regarding the dispensing fee. The second change in this amendment to the amendment strikes the reference to drug manufacturer paying a credit rebate, discount, or other payment to a health plan or covered entity, and reflects that the pharmacy benefit manager shall pay 100% of all credits, rebates, discounts, or other such payments in negotiation with the drug manufacturers. Mr. President, I urge adoption.
Is there discussion? Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the chairman yield, please?
Will the senator from Marshall yield? The senator yields.
Yep. It's harder to hear in these daggone masks. One of the issues that we worked on in the committee was to try to get the rebate back to as close to the patient as possible. And the last I saw, that was going to go back to the insurance plan with the idea that it would, if it doesn't cost as much, they could lower the premium some. Did your amendment to the amendment do anything to the rebates?
No, it didn't. And that is, thank you for pointing that out, because the most important part of this bill is to take some of this rebate money and get it to the people of West Virginia. And that was the hardest part of this bill, because to get it to the people at the point of sale had a functionality issue. And so we were trying to figure out how to do that. Okay, and what we decided was we found there's a proven model with the 430B pharmacies and kind of went along that model and gave this rebates to the insurance plans, one step above the people, but it comes with very strict reporting requirements to the insurance commissioner to ensure that every penny of those rebates finds its way back to the people in the forms of decreased copays and decreased premiums.
So the amendment to the amendment doesn't affect that right there?
The amendment to the amendment does not affect money going to the health plans, from the PBMs to the health plans to the people.
Okay, thank you.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment to the amendment offered by the by the senator from Marshall. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment. I declare the amendment to the amendment approved. Are there further amendments to the amendment?
No, sir.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of an amendment to the amendment offered by the Committee of Health and Human, the senator from Marshall, as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Bills on first reading. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members. Miscellaneous business. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that a leave of absence be granted to our senator from Randolph.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until Monday at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? If not, the question before the Senate is the Senate stand adjourned until Monday, 11 a.m. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned.
The House will please be in order. Those persons not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time, and members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by the gentleman of 35th, Doug Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's bow our heads. Father, as we gather today to undertake the tasks to which you have called us, move within us and among us to inspire, energize, and empower us to embody your wisdom, your compassion, and your benevolence. In every endeavor, bless us to be a blessing this day and all the days that follow. I pray in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen. If members and guests will please remain standing, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance today by the gentleman of 65th, Doug Clark.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Thursday, March 11th, 2021.
Gentleman 32nd, Doug Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Are there objections? There are no objections. Lady from the 49th for an update on the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the calendar today, third reading, House Bill 2804 has been placed to follow House Bill 2788. Also, on the special calendar, third reading, committee substitute for House Bill 2770 has been transferred to the House calendar. Special calendar, second reading, committee substitute for House Bill 2702 has been moved to the House calendar.
Introduction of guests. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our doc of the day is Dr. Ben Perrin of Huntington. If we could please make him welcome.
Reports of standing committees.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2817, Donated Drug Repository Program. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
That report will be received without objections. We will return briefly to introduction of guests. Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here to introduce today a former member of this body. If she might stand for us, you may recognize her. I do. My mother's with us today, Shelley Moore Capito, our United States Senator.
Further reports, standing committees.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2634, Coverage for the Treatment of Chronic Pain. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2861, relating to medical evaluation reports for workers' compensation. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2808, remove salt from list and definition of mineral for severance tax purposes. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing has had under consideration Senate Bill 404, modifying well work permits issued by DEP Office of Oil and Gas. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing has had under consideration House Bill 2667 to create a cost-saving program for state buildings regarding energy efficiency. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2805, making Pierpoint Community and Technical College a division of Fairmont State University, known as the Pierpoint College of Community and Technical Education. Education reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report to be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 3131 relating to correcting internal code references and citations, and originated House Bill 3133 relating to motor carrier rates. These are originating with recommendation that they each do pass.
The report to be received.
Your Committee on Judiciary has originated House Bill 3128 relating to carrier fees on 911 fee revenues. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
The report to be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had in consideration House Bill 2794 to extend the Neighborhood Investment Program Act to July 1, 2026, and to increase the allowable tax credit from $3 million to $5 million. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Originating in the Committee on Judiciary is House Bill 3078 relating to powers and duties of the Parole Board. It's reported with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Concurrent Resolution 22, Bill Odell Memorial Bridge. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that it be adopted, that be referred to Committee on Rules.
Report will be received and the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 15 extending certain leases between U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Nicholas County Airport Authority. House Concurrent Resolution 8, United States Army Sergeant First Class Guy Hively Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 13, Tech 5 U.S. Army Donald Tiny Lucas Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 16, Private First Class Franklin D. Fraser Memorial Road. House Concurrent Resolution 32 to name Gatewood Road in Fayette County as the Senator Shirley Love Memorial Road. Reports the same back with recommendation that each be adopted.
The report to be received and each resolution will be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2400 authorizing the Division of Highways to promulgate a legislative rule relating to traffic and safety rules. Reports the back committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2838 authorize the ordering of restitution to the state for reimbursements of costs incurred or for misuse of public funds, and to create the State Auditor's Public Integrity and Fraud Fund for use of said funds. Reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Originating in the Committee on Banking and Insurance is House Bill 3081, updating the West Virginia Business Corporations Act. It's reported with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 2747, transferring the parole board to the Office of Administrative Hearings, reported with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to recommit the bill back to Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security.
Lady from the 49th, ask unanimous consent that House Bill 2747 be recommitted to the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security. Are there objections? There are no objections. The bill will be so committed. Next report of standing committees.
Your Committee on Rules has had under consideration House Concurrent Resolution 9, urging Congress to call a convention of states to limit terms of office for the U.S. House of Representatives. House Concurrent Resolution 35, requesting the Department of Health and Human Resources to continuously evaluate the child welfare system. House Resolution 14, resolution on West Virginia's energy future, and Senate Concurrent Resolution 4, recognizing June 19th as Juneteenth Day. Reports the same back with recommendation that they each be adopted.
Report will be received. Are there further reports of standing committees? If not, reports of select committees. A message from the executive.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Henshaw presents a communication from His Excellency the Governor advising that on March 11th, 2021, he approved committee substitute for House Bill 2012.
The message will be received. Message from the Senate.
Clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has concurred in the House amendments and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 216, authorizing the Department of Commerce to promulgate legislative rules.
Message be received.
The Senate has concurred in the House amendments and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 272, relating to West Virginia Employment Law Worker Classification Act.
Message be received.
The Senate has concurred in the House amendments and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 277, creating COVID-19 Jobs Protection Act.
Message be received.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 314, regulating pawnbrokers.
The message be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Are there further messages from the Senate? If not, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 46, United States Navy Boatswain's First Class Ferris Burton Memorial Bridge.
Lady in the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the delegate console system.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the delegate console system. Are there objections? There are no objections. Petitions? Motions? Gentleman in the first, Douglas McGee, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to discharge House Bill 2138, better known as the so-called Defend the Guard Act, from the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security.
That was 2138.
That's correct.
The question before the House is the gentleman's motion that House Bill 2138 be discharged from the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security. This is a debatable question. Is there discussion on the motion? Gentleman in the first, Douglas McGee, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those of you that have been in this chamber in the previous years, will kind of know this bill, especially in the last couple years. But I'll just briefly outline it, and then we can have some further debate. I'm sure there's some arguments against this bill. But I'd like to just lay out sort of the basic concepts first for those of you that are unfamiliar with this legislation. This legislation would effectively, just to simplify things, prohibit our state's National Guard units from being deployed overseas into foreign nations, into combat zones, without a condition of a formal declaration of war passed by the U.S. Congress, as the U.S. Constitution would mandate. For far too long, the federal government has essentially abdicated its duty, especially the legislative branch in the federal government. They've abdicated its duty to the executive. And that's happened for several reasons, and this has gone on for, almost 80 years now. The last time this country declared war, as it rightly should before we go to war, was in the Second World War, during the Greatest Generation. But since then, we've just played word games. The Korean conflict, the Vietnam conflict, kinetic actions now. And so we need to get back to some sort of sanity before we send our men and women in uniform into harm's way overseas and put their lives in danger. And we need to have some sort of objective standard to do such. And the founders of this country gave us that objective standard in Article 1, Section 8. Only the Congress has the power to declare war. And we all know that's just really viewed as something on paper anymore, because that's not the way it works. So we need to get back to that. We need to get back to the truth of the matters. We need to get back to some sort of objective standard before we commit our forces overseas and spread ourselves thin and bankrupt ourselves financially and spill American blood and innocent foreign blood for unnecessary reasons, as we've all seen in the past 20 years. We're still in Afghanistan after almost 21 years. I was in Afghanistan 16 years ago. Very difficult to believe. So consider this. Consider what I'm going to argue in my closing statement. But this is a very important bill, I think, it's near and dear to my heart from my family's military service. But there's a lot of other veterans in here that have probably done a lot more than I did overseas. And other folks in here that might be sympathetic to this because their relatives served as well. And this is not something that's against the troops. This is something that we're trying to do to take care of the troops, take care of our precious military, our precious resources that we have to defend the country. There's been over 30 other states now introduce this same bill that I've been introducing for 7 years this year. So we're not alone. Don't think of that we're all stepping out onto a ledge into something new. But this is a very important bill, and if our oaths of office are to mean anything, we need to get back to some sort of objective standard. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the right to close, and I ask for the yeas and nays. Thank you very much.
The gentleman from the 32nd, Douglas Fast, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield, please?
Yes.
You mentioned 30 states have introduced this legislation. How many have passed it?
Well, none have passed it yet, but 30 states are introducing it. Well, I think, let me qualify that. I believe 21 have introduced it this legislative season, and we have a total of 31 commitments by the end of this year.
So none have passed it so far.
This coalition just got underway in the last year and a half.
Okay. Are members of the West Virginia National Guard, I've never been in the military, are they considered active duty military personnel?
Only when they're federalized. And in the Constitution, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, it lays out 3 enumerated powers when the federal government can federalize our state's National Guard troops. And those 3 criterion are to suppress an insurrection, to repel an invasion, and to enforce the laws of the Union. You'd be pretty far stretched to make an argument that using National Guardsmen to, say, invade sovereign countries overseas is somehow repelling an invasion. So only under those 3 criterion, which the National Guard cites as their sole, that phrase, that line in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, is the National Guard themselves cite that as their sole reason for existence. So to answer your question is, they're only federalized and supplement the United States Army when those 3 criterion are met. That's sort of been done away with, and it's sort of been willy-nilly now. They federalize them whenever they essentially want to.
Are members of the West Virginia National Guard considered part of what we call special forces in our military? Special force teams?
Yeah, there's National Guard Special Forces units, but again, they're under the command or under the direction of state control still, unless they're federalized. And I just gave you the constitutional criterion for when they can be federalized.
If it would be necessary for the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, to institute a secretive military strike without obtaining a declaration of war, where would the President get the manpower to do that? Manpower being general military.
Well, preemptive war is probably not a good doctrine from the Christian just war theory, starting with Augustine, St. Augustine, going through St. Thomas Aquinas. You never want preemptive war, right? So, we wouldn't want to launch a premeditated preemptive offensive war, some secret
not
strike.
Necessarily preemptive. Sometimes it's reactive, a reactive military strike sometimes quicker than others.
Yeah, and
where would the president obtain the troops to do that?
Well, hold on. I think I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
If we're attacked, a state of a war is already upon us. We don't have to go to the Congress to declare war. The state of war is already upon us, and the president has every right to defend the homeland. So it's not like we have to go wait around for the Congress to debate that, because a state of war already exists. A declaration of war is necessary only when when we want to change a state of peace to a state of war.
What if the Congress does not declare a declaration of war, but yet it is necessary for political reasons, if any, for no other reason, but yet it's truly necessary to engage in military combat? Would this limit the president's ability to do that as the commander-in-chief?
So you're saying that the president wants to go to war regardless of whether the Congress has declared war?
I'm saying that
that would be
if
unconstitutional.
It's necessary to engage in military combat, whether or not Congress declares war, would this bill limit the president's ability to do that?
Okay, so I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you asking me if the president just wants to go to war without the Congress, would this limit the president's ability to do that?
Sometimes.
Well, yeah, it would. That's the whole point.
Sometimes it's necessary for the president, like when we invaded Nicaragua.
I mean, the president is not a king, right? So in the Constitution, it lays out what the proper powers are between the three branches. And the Congress alone has the power of war. Do you want me to read what the father of the Constitution,
I
James
want to ask
Madison,
you a
said
question.
about that?
I'd like to ask you a question, if I may.
Well, I'm answering your question, but you got to give me something here.
I believe it was President Ronald Reagan that invaded Nicaragua. There was no declaration of war. Would this have limited his ability to do that?
He was using all active duty troops at that time.
Okay,
I mean, the invasion
so he
of
didn't use
Nicaragua
National
was...
Guardsmen in that invasion.
Yeah, he didn't use any National Guardsmen, to my knowledge.
All right. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
The gentleman at 37th, Douglas Pushkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of inquiry.
Gentleman may state the inquiry.
The question is to whether or not to discharge the bill from which committee?
The Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security.
And how many committee references does the bill have?
It does have a second reference to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Okay, so what we're voting on is to take it out of the minor committee and send it to Judiciary.
If the motion is adopted, the bill would be still referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Okay, briefly, just want to clear something up.
Gentleman is recognized.
Just briefly, I don't, as a child of the 80s, I don't remember invading Nicaragua. That's all.
The gentleman from the 66, Douglas Espinosa, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to respectfully urge rejection of the gentleman's motion. This piece of legislation was properly referenced first to the Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security Committee. And what the gentleman's motion would achieve if we adopt his motion would be to circumvent probably the committee here in this House that is best equipped to initially examine this piece of legislation. So again, I would urge that you reject this procedural motion and honor our committee process, allow the Veterans Committee, Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security Committee, if it's the will of that committee, to take this legislation up. And again, I would urge a no vote on the motion. Thank you.
The gentleman from 36, Douglas Pritt, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In terms of what we're trying to do here, in terms of the actual bill, I want to speak in favor of the bill and the concept. One of the problems that I think we've had throughout our nation's history, especially recently, is that we have gone contrary to the what the founders envisioned. I don't think the founders of our country envisioned what we are doing right now when it comes to declaring war on a number of other issues. There are very, very basic, simple things that we can do as a legislative body, things that even Congress isn't doing right now, to exercise their rights. I think that there is a complete imbalance as far as our separation of powers. I think it's important that both the states and the Congress do everything they can to try to take back some of the powers and authority that they have abdicated to the federal government. And I think this is a very basic thing that could be done. So I rise in support. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 25th, Docket Painter, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this, of course. And in this day and age when we seem to use the Constitution as a doormat instead of a guidance to run the country by, this is a good start to getting it back on the right track. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 47th, Docket Phillips, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise in support of this motion. I think it's an important debate for us to have. We've seen more and more abrogation of constitutional powers to the executive, and I think it's important for us to have that debate in this body and in the committees. And we hear a lot of negatives on this bill, and they deserve discussion also. But the simple solution is to follow the Constitution and have Congress uphold their duty to declare war, which we haven't done for many decades now, despite being involved around the globe. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 50th, Docket Ward, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I look around here, I see several people my age or older, but a lot of people here are a lot younger than I am. And they probably don't remember the Vietnam War. I do. I remember the Vietnam War. Fortunately, I graduated in 1974. The war had ended. The draft had been done away with. But I remember growing up during the Vietnam War. The National Guard didn't fight in the Vietnam War. Our National Guard stayed home. They had a draft back then to get those young men to go fight that so-called war. And they called it a police action. My mom grew up in a tight-knit neighborhood, and like many of people in West Virginia do even today, they were real close to their neighbors. And next door to my grandmother's lived a family, had a young boy that my mom used to babysit for when she was in high school. His dream was to become an airplane pilot, to fly jets. I remember I was little, he was still in high school, and he went to college and joined the Air Force. And they sent him to Vietnam. On one of his sorties, he came up missing. And he didn't come home, not then. Years later, they did find his plane, or his jet, and sent some remains home. That war was senseless. My father was in the military during the Korean War. And when I graduated from high school, of course, I had done with the draft. He begged me not to join the military. We had just got through the Vietnam War. And my brother had served during the Vietnam War, but he was in the Navy. But my father begged me not to do that. He said, they're just going to start another Vietnam someday. I don't want to see you go there. That's how bad that war was. We lost a lot of good American lives, a lot of good soldiers. And what did we win? We didn't win nothing. We lost that war. We don't need to be sending our young men and women off to police actions when some president thinks he needs to. And this last president we had, President Trump, he was trying to bring our troops home. That was his goal, was to get those young men and women home. And so we need to send a message to Washington and tell them that we're not going to stand around and let them do that to our young men and women. We need to support this motion by the gentleman from the first. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 10th, Doug Conley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a father of someone that's in the military, I fully understand the concept of this, but at the same time, I have to look at the thoughts of the person, the people serving in the military. My son, Sergeant First Class Chad Conley, is a career guardsman with nearly 20 years, been to Liberia, been to Bosnia, been to Afghanistan. And I asked him, what his thoughts was on this, and his response to me was, just bear with me here just a second, I would not be in favor of this at all. I don't think you can always wait on a declaration. I think most of us understand when we signed up that we need to be able to get up and go on a moment's notice. So again, as a career guardsman, I would not be in favor of this at this time.
The gentleman from the 17th, Doug Lovejoy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to speak in support of the motion, and I say the motion and not necessarily the bill. I don't know where I'd come out on this bill, Mr. Speaker, but I know that the idea that we should foreclose a debate on this very issue is worrying to me. I've stood up at least 3 times to talk about the separation of powers because it's something I believe in. I believe that the founders were worried about one particular branch having too much power, so these checks and balances were put into place. I think it was Madison that said if all men were angels, we wouldn't need a government. But yet recognizing our human nature, we put in this very divided, very clear division. I share the concerns of my friend that over time, long before many of us were around, those divisions have been eroded. And now the things that our own framers set up as checks and balances are sometimes formalities or word games, as he says. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to see the issue debated. I think my friend from the first sometimes gets a bum rap for this bill. I think he's a leader around the nation of the idea. I think he reminds me, as I've told him, of Socrates in Plato's Apology. He's that gadfly that sometimes pesters that horse, and people don't like it, and they smack at him, and they want him to stop. But he believes in it, and I'm willing to give him his chance to have a debate. So I'm going to vote for his discharge motion.
The lady from the 38th, Doug Graves, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the motion, not necessarily in opposition to the bill. The bill, I think, has a lot of really far-reaching potential effects that I think deserves to be discussed. I don't even know at this point yet if I may vote in favor of that bill if it comes before us for that kind of consideration. What I'm rising in opposition to is the discharge, which means a complete exception to the process for this particular bill. Now, all of our bills do have to go through that process, and there's a reason for that. The process is to make sure that there are so many different things to take into account. How does our sister chamber feel? How do the majority of our members feel? What kind of problems does the bill have? What kind of things do we need to add to it to make sure that we're not jeopardizing, for instance, federal funding, which is definitely a concern with this bill? It has to go through the committee process. Now, if that happens, and it's the will of this body to make sure that it goes through the committee process, I think that would happen. But I don't see why we need to make an exception for this particular bill when every one of our other bills has to fight for that right to be on an agenda. And I would ask all of you to support the process, which works, and to not bring it hastily down to the floor and be the sole exception, and not go through that process, which I think we can all agree tends to make our work product a lot better.
The gentleman from the 30th, Doug Bates, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my friend from the first yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I think this is the second time I recall having this discussion on the floor. This bill last year, I think, did pass through the Veterans Affairs Committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And are you a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee?
No, I'm not this
year.
year.
You were previously?
I was chair of the committee previously, but I believe I was kicked off maybe, if you could count the number of committees as they go by, being booted off. I think I was kicked off, removed maybe a year ago, 2 years ago.
Okay. And the bill itself hasn't come before the committee, is that right? It's not been placed on an agenda at this point?
No, and I don't, I think they have one more meeting, and I think it's been implied that it won't be on the agenda, and that's one of the reasons for the discharge here, is so that it won't die there and it might get a hearing in a major committee like the Judiciary Committee. And that's really what I'm asking for, is to keep it alive, continue the debate up in the Judiciary Committee if the chairman of the Judiciary would put it on there. And I'm sure it'll die a slow, painful death up there. But nonetheless, I'd like to keep it alive and at least have the hearing and make some of the arguments in that committee that I'm now on, actually.
Okay, thank you,
I'm
sir.
very fortunate to be on that. Yeah.
Good.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of 29th, De Castillo, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We wind up engaging in a lot of debates over the last few years, this being one of them. I remember, I'm looking over at Chad right now, we had the debate about the DUI issue we had a couple years ago. And everything to do with federal funding, you're going to lose this support from the federal government, things like that. I only want to say one thing this morning is, as a body, part of our constitutional responsibility goes back as state legislators of asserting our role in the federal government. And sometimes I'm a little apprehensive about that. The federal government's big. The federal government does a lot of things, sends a lot of money to West Virginia. But we can't be afraid to have the debate on the federal issue. It is actually your role, each one of your roles in the federal Constitution, to assert the state's message, to assert the state's position on things. And as a body, on a myriad of different issues, whether it be DUI law, whether it be this issue, whether it do with Medicaid and Medicare, we cannot be so afraid of these dollars from the federal government that we lose sight of your constitutional responsibility to engage the federal government from the standpoint of the state. The state has no representative but you. They don't. And this morning on our desks, we see something very near and dear to a lot of folks in here's heart, of bans on weapons with detachable magazines that hold magazines of more than 10 rounds that just passed our federal Congress. Are we going to be unwilling to have the debate on that because we're afraid of losing some funding from the federal government? Do we just pack up all our modern sporting rifles and hand it back to them? I don't think that's what we do. I think we have to engage our federal government. I really do. And I hope all of you will think about that as we have these debates going forward in the future.
The gentleman of 13th, Doug Pinson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a tough place for us to be in. The motion before us is a discharge motion to discharge this bill out of committee. And I've looked at the committee. In fact, I have the members of that committee in front of me. And I see on this committee esteemed colleagues. I see on this committee many individuals who have served in the armed forces. I see on this committee individuals who most likely would be in favor of this bill. The bill itself is a big step. and most likely a needed step. But I worry that if we discharge this bill out of the Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security Committee, that committee was created for a purpose. And I worry that if we discharge this bill out of committee today, that the very discussion that my friend just spoke about, the very debate that my friend just spoke about, won't be had. I will stand and err in the rules just real quickly to say this is a bill that I could support. But we're not voting today on the bill. We're voting today on the discharge of a very valuable committee reference, and I would remind all members to consider that as they vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate on the bill or on the motion? The gentleman 28th, Eka Cooper, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here comes a history lesson. 1962, to avoid the draft, which I never registered for, I was 17 years old. I was actually 16 years old and 13 months, to be honest. So I joined the Navy, and we had a draft. It was the big fear of every teenager to get a good job and then be drafted. However, in 1974, after I had done 3 tours in Vietnam, my older brother had done 2, and my younger brother had done 1, and he was seriously injured and sent home because of it. We got rid of the draft in 1974. Up to that time, we had looked at National Guard troops and reservists as weekend warriors. And that was a nice thing to say about them. We said other things too. But the tip of the spear changed in 1974. Funding began to come in huge amounts to states to support their National Guard, because that became the tip of the spear. And I certainly understand the delegate from the 1st concern that we're going to be putting West Virginia citizens in jeopardy and putting their lives at risk. However, there's a choice in there. How many of you have sons or daughters that you would like to see drafted into the U.S. military and become the regular Army, regular Navy, regular Air Force, and become the tip of the spear? Today we have an all-volunteer force. The tip of our spear happens to be the National Guard of every state, and I'll get to the rest of that in a minute. I don't think we want to go back to the draft. I really don't. And so what the federal government has done is has funded and funded and funded, as the delegate from Raleigh points out. They have funded us to the point where we wouldn't have what we have in West Virginia without a competent and thorough and well-trained National Guard. It's not our fault that we have that. It's our benefit that we have that. It's to our benefit, because when there's a flood, as there was in 2016, those troops show up with good equipment that is owned, by the way, by the federal government. They show up to bail us out. Sometimes they may not be as trained as we think they should be, but part of the thing of showing up is training, Now, I agree the Constitution doesn't say that that's how it's supposed to be, but we haven't had a war since the Great War of the Second World War. So I'm not too concerned about that. These little conflicts that we have, because we have created the tip of the spear again, and the National Guard is the one that's doing the work. There's a young man in this building, down on the 1st floor, that served 5 tours of duty in Iraq. And you might see him come up and around here. He's the resiliency officer for the state of West Virginia now. 5 tours of duty. And if you ask him if he would like to see war declared before we could utilize the services of the National Guard in a conflict overseas, his answer would be, as it was 2 days ago when I talked to him, a resounding no. The troops do not want this because they know that they are being trained for this. They get the very best of equipment to do it with. The implications are far and further than just that. Since all the equipment is owned by the federal government, if we pass this bill, and that's why I didn't even consider bringing it out, and which was my prerogative, we passed those rules the first day. Those were our organizational rules. The chairman will decide, and I decided. I didn't decide alone, though. I talked to, I think, 4 veterans on the committee plus the minority chair about the bill before I made that final decision. But I agreed, debate is great, but here we are almost at the point where we can't do much about that bill, and we've got that debate in front of us. My question to folks is if there's enough of us in here to support the gentleman's motion, that motion should have been made 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, when we weren't tangled up into a budget, into the governor's income tax proposal, and into every other major piece of legislation that is very important. While I support the gentleman, and I have a great deal of respect for the gentleman from the first, I do not support the notion of discharging this bill, and I do not support the notion of ever passing this bill. And so I will vote to not discharge. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate on the motion? If not, the chair recognizes the gentleman from the first, Douglas McGeehan, to close debate on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I guess you see your answer here with the gentleman that just spoke. They never had any intent to put it on the agenda in the minor committee in Veterans Affairs. And that's why this was necessary, so that I could move it to a major committee with some thoughtful consideration of the merits of the bill. And that's why I'm making this motion. But I know there's a lot of anecdotes about different National Guardsmen or different active duty service members and asking them, hey, do you want a declaration of war before you go off and do your duty? And I was one of those kids after I graduated from the 4 years of hell or heck I did at the Air Force Academy, who was gung-ho and wanted to get into the fight. And I probably would have said, no, I don't want to wait for some politicians. I want to get over there. But that's why we have prudent, wise civilian control over the military. And we all took an oath of office. And the oath of office is pretty objective, but it's becoming more and more subjective as we deny truth itself in this secular age, which, by the way, is a self-refuting statement because you presuppose the very thing you assert. You know, I'm not some sort of 1960s counterculturist, by the way. Look at my haircut. I've had the same thing since when I was 17 years old. It's high and tight, all right? I did my time. My father, and I don't talk about this a whole lot, was killed in the line of duty for a principle. He was an Air Force bomber pilot. My grandfather witnessed the surrender of the Japanese on board the USS Missouri in Tokyo Harbor. My other grandfather traversed Omaha Beach and was part of the Battle of the Bulge. My great-grandfather fought in the Argonne in the First World War. It's not like I'm some sort of hippie proposing this bill. Okay? I don't rarely say this because I don't think it should matter. I like the logic, the ideas. But we want to have people stand up and say, you know, I served these many tours and I know more than you, and they make all these appeals to authority. Well, I'll just go ahead and do the same thing real quick to shut that down, because I come from a lot of experience. My father took his oath of office very seriously, and I do too, and I hope all you guys do. There's a lot more at stake here than this discharge motion. There's a lot more at stake than just this bill. You know, anybody in the service, by the way, and there's a few officers in here that I think one went to the War College. knows just war doctrine, derived from Cicero, goes through Augustine, all the way through Thomas Aquinas. It's taught at staff colleges and war colleges in all the armed forces, but we don't follow it. Every single conflict and war this country has been engaged in since the Second World War, in one way or another, has violated the very just war doctrine that we teach our senior officers. I could go through the list. And the Founding Fathers knew these just war doctrines from these great thinkers and scholars from the ancients and the medieval times. Look, I'll read you a few quick predominant quotes from the framers. The father of the Constitution, James Madison. The Constitution supposes what the history of all governments demonstrates, that the executive is the branch of power most interested in war and most prone to it. It has accordingly, with studied care, vested the question of war in the legislature. Here's another one. The author of the Declaration of Independence. We have already given an example, one effectual check to the dog of war, by transferring the power of letting him loose from the executive to the legislative body. Considering that Congress alone is constitutionally vested with the power of changing our condition from peace to war, I have thought it my duty to await their authority for using force in any degree which could be avoided. Even Alexander Hamilton, who proposed and pushed for a stronger central government. Here it is. The Congress shall have the power to declare war, the plain meaning of which is that it is the peculiar and exclusive duty of Congress, when the nation is at peace, to change that state into a state of war. I don't understand how anyone can construe any of the intent from those quotes and many others, I just selected a few, to be what the intent was when this nation goes to war. You know, one thing that happens when we get together as a legislative body, we act a little bit slower than the executive. We debate issues. And war, let me suggest, is the greatest and gravest and most dangerous enterprises that the almighty state and that the government engages in. And so when the power of war is vested in a legislature like the Congress, it has to be debated transparently. And the truth at least has a chance in those debates that are transparent, out in the open, to rise to the surface. So it puts the brakes on before we rush headlong into some unnecessary war again. Sometimes war is necessary. But we've been at war for decades. And I just don't want us to go the way of all the old great civilizations that destroyed themselves financially and at the cost of human blood. I know this isn't some of your issues. This isn't your issue. I get it. You're probably under a lot of pressure from other people saying, vote against this guy. You may like me, you may dislike me. Honestly, I'm pretty indifferent to it. I just like the logic at hand. So I just ask you, if you agree with the idea and you at least think that it deserves a little bit more consideration, all I'm asking is that you discharge it from the minor committee that's not going to put it on the agenda, and so that we can at least have some sort of more considerate, judicious, thought-out debate in the next committee, which is the Judiciary Committee. And I'm sure it'll go down in flames there, but that's all I'm asking. So I take my oath of office seriously, and if we don't have an objective standard like a declaration of war anymore, then the truth's lost. It becomes arbitrary. And we deserve to reclaim some sort of objective standard before we send our men and women into harm's way overseas. And I would just close with the federal subsidies argument that if anyone wants to argue that we're going to lose federal subsidies with this, I don't think we will. I've studied that issue, but I'll be generous. Let's just assume that argument's correct. Anybody that votes against this for the prime reason that we may lose federal subsidies, I would dare you just to show up at the next man or woman who comes back from overseas in a coffin draped in that American flag, and you tell that widow or you tell that orphan, I'm sorry, son, I'm sorry, ma'am, but your father had to die in some foreign conflict that was unauthorized by the Constitution because we didn't want to lose federal subsidies. So I ask for the ayes and nays. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is on the motion that House Bill 2138 be discharged from the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security. Roll call vote on the motion is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the motion be adopted? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. The question on that question, there were 26 ayes, 71 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. Less than a majority in the affirmative. The chair declares that motion lost. Are there further motions? Bills introduced.
House Bill 3082 provide help stabilizing funding sources for the DEP Division of Air Quality.
Lady in the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the delegate console system.
Lady in the 49th, ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the delegate console system. Are there objections? There are no objections. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Senate Bill 89, exempting certain kindergarten and preschool programs offered by private schools from registration requirements.
Ladies and gentlemen, this bill was advanced to third reading with the right to amend. Are there amendments?
Delegate Higginbotham moves to amend the
Chair is in error. There was no advancement with the right to amend. Are there objections to the gentleman to 13th offering an amendment on third reading? Chair hears no objection. The clerk will report the amendment.
Delegate Higginbotham moves to amend the bill on page 3, section 113. This is Higginbotham 3-12, number 1.
Are there objections to having the amendment explained in lieu of having read? There are no objections. The gentleman to 13th will explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After we adopted an amendment in committee, we were approached by the department, DHHR, about an issue with about half of it. Essentially, we need to allow for the registration of daycare centers and events at county parks and rec commissions and other government facilities. The amendment simply made it to where they didn't even have to register with the department. So this simply strikes that and makes it to where they have to do that once more. So I urge adoption of the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment just explained by the gentleman to 13th. Is there discussion on the amendment? The gentleman to 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chair please yield?
Yes.
So this new language that you have, what is the stylistic change from what we just passed out of committee again?
So it removes half of the gentleman from the 65th amendment. If you remember in committee, we adopted his amendment to include some of these parks and rec commissions. It simply takes that part out. So it doesn't mean that they have to go through the licensing process. It simply means that, once again, they'll still have to register with DHHR.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman to 66, Delegate Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. and thank him for addressing the issue that was discovered yesterday. Again, this will accomplish the goal of the legislation by making clear that our Parks and Recreation departments can engage and offer these type of programs, but it retains the requirement that they do register, just which is consistent with other parts of code. So again, I'd urge support of the gentleman's amendment.
Question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares that amendment adopted. Clerk will read the bill a third time as amended.
House Bill, Senate Bill 89, exempting certain kindergarten and preschool programs offered by private schools from registration requirements.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If there are no objection, the gentleman from 13th, Doug Higginbotham, will explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill exempts from child care licensure requirements any kindergarten, preschool, or school education program which is operated by a private, parochial, or church school who is recognized by the West Virginia Department of Education under Policy 2330. The bill also exempts federally approved Head Start programs from child care licensure requirements and adds clarifying language exempting summertime recreation camps run by Park and Rec departments from licensure requirements. That is the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman to 16th, Doug Hornbuckle, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that the bill gets rid of duplicative language and also creates some efficiencies, and I would support the bill. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 89, exempting certain kindergarten and preschool programs offered by private schools from registration requirements.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Higginbotham moves to amend the title.
Questions on the adoption of the title amendment? Those in favor of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading. For what purpose does the gentleman 16 seek recognition? Clerk will report the next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 295, relating generally to economic development loans and loan insurance issued by the state.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman the 16th will explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 295 relates generally to the broadband loan insurance program. Senate Bill 295 specifically modifies current law relating to economic development loans and loan insurance issued by the state, principally to continue and revise what will now be known as the Broadband Loan Insurance Program under the West Virginia Economic Development Authority. Under this, the EDA may insure for up to 20 years private loans and letters of credit that are obtained by eligible broadband providers for its capital costs in projects that have their principal purpose of providing broadband service and that would build a segment of a telecommunications network that links a network operator's core network to a local network plant that serves either an unserved area, as we've defined, or an area in which no more than 2 wireline providers are operating. The loan insurance is provided by the EDA through a non-recourse loan provided to them by the Board of Treasury Investments. It also brings in significant new controls that were brought on by a concern that we had from the Legislative Auditor's Office that was detailed shortly before we convened legislative session. Among those are significant reporting requirements to learn from our mistakes. Mr. Speaker, that is a summary of the bill, and I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 295, relating generally to economic development loans and loan insurance issued by the state.
Are there amendments to the title?
Committee on Finance moves to amend the title.
Gentleman of the 64th Docket Householder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to withdraw the committee amendment to the title of the bill.
Are there objections? There are no objections. That title amendment is withdrawn. Are there further title amendments?
Delegate Householder moves to amend the title. This is HFAT Householder 3-12.
The question before the House is the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2682, relating to Committee substitute for House Bill 2382, authorizing the Department of Environmental Protection to promulgate a legislative rule related to ambient air quality standards.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman of the 35th, Douglas Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee substitute for House Bill 2382 contains the Department of Environmental Protection Rules Bundle. The rules bundle contains 10 rules, the first of which is 45 CSR 8 from the DEP dealing with air quality. It speaks generally to that section of code, also does some definitional updates and adopts new standards. The next rule is also 45 CSR 16 is an air quality rule, again adopting new standards and updating and modifying some definitions. The next rule is 45 CSR 28, air quality rule, again definitionally and new standards adopted there, dealing with the requirements for new hospital medicine infectious waste incinerators. It deals with requirements for existing hospital medical and infectious waste incinerators in the sense that it does some stylistic and wording modification, deals with rules concerning existing commercial and industrial waste incinerators. The next rule is 45 CSR 23, air quality rule, and deals with requirements related to the existing municipal solid waste landfills. 45 CSR 33, air quality rule. Again, this is new standard adoptions, some definitional changes. 45 CSR 34 is another air quality rule dealing with, again, adoption of new standards and some definitional changes. 45 CSR 44, air quality rule, dealing again with some definitional changes, permit applications, permit requirements, standards of performance and compliance, periods, monitoring, record keeping, and reporting, some inconsistencies between existing rules, and the disposition of permits. 47 CSR 02 is the water quality rule, which we touched on yesterday a bit, and 33 CSR 20 is a waste management, division of water and waste management rule. 60 CSR 03 is the voluntary remediation and redevelopment rule. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the bundle. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman of the 51st, Douglas Hanson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to remind members, because there was a long list of rules that were listed there, that this is the bill that would weaken protections for about a dozen toxic and cancer-causing pollutants in our drinking water supplies. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 73 ayes, 24 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2382, authorizing the Department of Environmental Protection to promulgate a legislative rule relating to ambient air quality standards.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 74 ayes, 23 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective for passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2682, relating to the issuance of license suspensions to insurance producers and insurance adjusters who have failed to meet continuing education requirements.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 12th, Douglas Westfall, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This committee substitute to House Bill 2682. The bill addresses notification process requirements for license suspension based on failing to meet continuing education requirements for insurance producers and adjusters. Under current law, insurance producers and adjusters are notified by certified mail. The bill will change it to an email notification system or regular mail if required by the producer or adjuster, if requested by the producer or adjuster. The bill will also require insurance producers and adjusters to provide the insurance commissioner with their full name, address, and email address. If not currently provided to the commissioner, it would be needed to provide it at the next renewal for their license. Producers and adjusters would also be required to report any changes to the information within 30 days. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 2 nays, and 3 members absent or were not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2682, relating to the issuance of license suspensions to insurance producers and insurance adjusters who have failed to meet continuing education requirements.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2758, requiring the insurance commissioner to regulate professional bondsmen.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman from the 12th, Douglas Westfall, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee substitute House Bill 2758. This bill regulates the bail bondsman business by the insurance commissioner. The bill would allow the insurance commissioner to promulgate and propose rules to regulate the qualification of a bail bondsman, application requirements, and bonding business authorization renewals. Further, the insurance commissioner would be required to maintain a list of all authorized bail bondsmen and provide that the list to the places of detention upon request. In all, this bill allowed the insurance commissioner to bring the bail bondsman business in line with requirements of other surety business regulated by the insurance commissioner. That's the bill, Mr. Commissioner, I'm sorry about that, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
Commissioner, Speaker, Chairman, whatever the day calls for. Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 93 ayes, 4 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2758, requiring the Insurance Commissioner to regulate professional bondsmen.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk. Will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2763, creating West Virginia cyber incident reporting.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objection. The gentleman of the 16th, Doug Linville, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill comes to the legislature by request of the Cybersecurity Office and after some work in the interims between myself and the Chief Technology Officer of the state. It provides a means by which all state agencies, constitutional officers, local government entities, county boards of education, the various branches of government, including judicial and legislative branches, are required to report any cybersecurity incidents to the cybersecurity offices within 10 days following the agency's determination that a qualifying cybersecurity incident has occurred. Many agencies, polysubs, and other entities have similar infrastructure, processes, software, and hardware, and this notice requirement to the Office of Technology Cybersecurity Office allows coordination between the various levels, branches, and divisions of government, allowing guidance to be issued and threats to be prevented. Mr. Speaker, that's a summary of the bill. I'm happy to answer any questions, and of course, I urge its passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman of the 43rd, Doug Thompson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield for a question?
Yes.
Thank you. Just for clarification and for the betterment of all the members of the body, could you give us an example or some examples of what a cybersecurity incident may be?
Sure. So it's defined in the bill with the way that the federal government defines it. And there's 3 different levels of cybersecurity incident that would be required here. But most specifically, as it regards, for instance, a county board of education, if a threat actor were able to access their networks and, for instance, pull contact information or other information that should be protected, personally identifiable information of a student within 10 days of that board of education
or
finding
staff,
that out.
right?
Staff as well. Yes. But as soon as such an action were detected within 10 days, that must be reported to the cybersecurity office.
Okay. Very good. Any other? Would this also relate to with the county commissions?
Yes.
Any public entity? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 2 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2763, creating West Virginia cyber incident reporting.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2788, expiring funds to the unappropriated surplus balance from state excess lottery revenue fund.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman of the 64th will explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this supplemental appropriation bill is to expire unappropriated surplus funds in the state excess lottery revenue fund to the unappropriated surplus balance of general revenue in the amount of $6,497,548. I urge passage.
Question is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 1 nay, and 4 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2788, expiring funds to the unappropriated surplus balance from state excess lottery revenue fund.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 1 nay, and 4 members absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2804, expiring funds to the unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 64th will explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this supplemental appropriation bill is to expire funds to the unappropriated surplus balance of general revenue in the amount of $15,500,000. These funds are expired from the Department of Administration, Board of Risk and Insurance Management, Mine Subsistence Insurance Fund in the amount of $13,500,000, and the Department of Veterans Assistance Veterans Facility Support Fund in the amount of $2 million. I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman from 34th, Douglas Boggs, is recognized.
Gentleman, you. To my friend the chair, thank you, Mr. Speaker. To my friend the chairman, how far does this get us for the public defenders? Because I know this is an annual bill.
That's the next bill. That's the next supplement.
Oh, we're on, not on, I'm sorry. I will withhold my question until then. Thank you.
Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2804, expiring funds to the unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk. Will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2789, supplementing and amending the appropriations to public defender services.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having the bill read? There are no objections. The gentleman of 64th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this supplemental appropriation bill is to appropriate $20 million in general revenue for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 to the Department of Administration for expenditure during the fiscal year 2021 in the following fund: Public Defender Service, Public Defender Corporation surplus, $18,800,000. Public Defender, Public Defender Service, Public Defender Corporation, $1,200,000. Public Defender Service appointed counsel fees surplus, $18,800,000. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman from 34th, Douglas Boggs.
Now I'll ask my question. I know that in addition to what is included in the budget and then this supplemental, what does that bring the total to for the year, for the fiscal year?
$54 million.
Do we anticipate that this will actually carry through, or will there be more expenses that we're unaware of at this point?
We expect this supplemental to take care of it all the way to the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Is there further debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 1 nay, and 3 members absent or not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2789, supplementing and amending the appropriations to public defender services.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill be effective from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2802, supplementing and amending the appropriations of public monies out of the Treasury for the balance of monies remaining as an unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue to the Department of Homeland Security, Division of Emergency Management.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman from the 64th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this supplemental is to increase the current expenses appropriation for the Department of Homeland Security's Division of Emergency Management by $650,000. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2802, supplementing and amending the appropriations of public monies out of the Treasury from the balance of monies remaining as an unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue to the Department of Homeland Security, Division of Emergency Management.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill be effective from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2803, supplementing and amending the appropriations of public monies out of the Treasury from the balance of monies remaining as an unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue to the Department of Commerce, Division of Forestry.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman from the 64th will explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this supplemental is to increase the personal services and the current expenses appropriations for the Department of Commerce, Division of Forestry by $800,000 and $200,000 respectively. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 95 ayes, 1 nay, and 4 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2803, supplementing and amending the appropriations of public monies out of the Treasury from the balance of monies remaining as an unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue to the Department of Commerce, Division of Forestry.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill be effective from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2916, creating the Semi-Quincentennial Commission for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 29th, Douglas Steele, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of House Bill 2916 is to create a semi-quincentennial commission for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 1 nay, and 4 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2916, creating the Semi-Quincentennial Commission for the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2932, protections for charitable organizations.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman from the 29th, Douglas Steele, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to provide a definition of a charitable organization to include benevolent, educational, philanthropic, humane, patriotic, religious, or eleemosynary organizations, and to limit the ability of state agencies to impose additional registration, reporting, or operational requirements through rulemaking beyond such requirements established in code. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill, and I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 85 ayes, 12 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2932, protections for charitable organizations.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for House Bill 2688, allow county political parties to have building funds in a similar manner that state parties are allowed.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2705, authorizing the Department of Health and Human Resources to promulgate a legislative rule relating to food establishments.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2785, relating to public school enrollment for students from out of state.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2797, declaring certain claims to be moral obligations of the state.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2834, adding the curator of the West Virginia Division of Arts, Culture, and History as an ex officio voting member of the commission.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2877, expand direct health care agreements beyond primary care to include more medical care services.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2891, creating minimum statutory standards for law enforcement officers.
Are there amendments?
Delegates Hannah and Higginbotham move to amend the bill. This is Hannah and Higginbotham, 3-11, number 1.
Are there objections to having the amendment explained in lieu of having the amendment read? There are none. The gentleman from the 44th is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I won't take too much of your time this morning. This amendment is simple, but I believe that it makes a world of difference. The language in this bill would require a police officer to be 21 by the time they graduate from the State Police Academy. From a perspective of the state police, this can be very appealing, but their language already requires state troopers to be 21. So this amendment lowers that age back to 18 so they can go through the academy and become a police officer. My reservation lies within the cities and municipalities who currently have the flexibility to hire officers who are 18 to 21. This would take that flexibility away. And this is the main competitive advantage that our cities and municipalities have over the state police when it comes to the hiring process. If there was a blanket 21 to go through the academy, say you have a gentleman who's 21 years old and he has the choice to go through and become a state trooper and go through to become a city cop. He's going to choose to become a state trooper because their pay and their benefits are so much better. So by lowering this back to 18, it gives the cities that flexibility and discretion to hire 18 to 21-year-olds. They don't have to. Some counties in the state already set their age limit at 21. Not all of them, but some of them already set their age limit at 21. I've spoke to my chief of police. He believes the age should be at 18. I spoke to multiple of your chiefs of police, your sheriffs. They believe the age should be at 18. I know many of us in this room, if not all of us, back the blue. These are new officers, so I would ask you to back the new blue too. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 54th, Douglas Hott, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe although the delegate from the 44th amendment is well intended, I rise in strong opposition to it. Most of you know that I have a daughter who's currently serving as a West Virginia State Trooper. I'm so proud of that. And I did want to let you know that I did reach out to the leadership of the West Virginia State Police, and they are opposed to lowering the age from 21 to 18. So I encourage a no vote on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 10th, Douglas Conley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I was looking at this amendment, I chose to reach out to one of our fine sheriffs here in West Virginia for an opinion. And his opinion was that I have no heartburn whatsoever with lowering the age down to 18. It certainly will be an advantage to some of our smaller communities, and even realizing that there's potentially some maturity issues with an 18-year-old. But I would submit to you that if you have an 18-year-old, and we talked a lot about the military this morning, that goes to Parris Island, he's going to come out a whole lot different person than when he went in. And I would submit to you that you're going to find the same thing, that the maturity level when they come out of the police academy is going to be a whole lot different than when they went in. And as we spoke about the military so much here this morning, I would also like to submit to you that if we trust someone under the age of 21 years old to go overseas and defend our homeland, we certainly should trust that same age group to trust that age group to protect us here at home in our homeland. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 6th, Douglas Kelly, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, everybody. I rise to respectfully oppose the amendment from my good friend over here from the 44th. It's well intended, but there's a couple things I want to bring to the attention of the body here today. The first thing is, if you'll take a look at the sponsors, there are 3 of us in this body that wore the uniform of a police officer. All 3 of us are on this bill in supporting it as to the age 21. Now, my friend from the 13th was 19 years old when he became a police officer, and he signed this bill readily understanding that we were going to increase it to 21. He signed it and supported it as 21. That speaks a lot. I spoke with a young man the other day who was 19 years old,
And he said to me, after going through the academy, after seeing the things that I've seen as a police officer, I can tell you I was too young at 19. This past summer, I was in a meeting with stakeholders. We talked about police reform. We talked about the things that matter to us as West Virginians. We want our police officers to be safe. Listen, I am in a family 4 generations deep with police officers. The 4th generation is in uniform right now. So I just want you to say that I don't take lightly what we're doing here. But I also know that we West Virginians just don't like change sometimes. When we started to increase the hours for basic classes from 400 to, and now it's 800, you would have thought the sky was going to fall. You would have thought that folks were just going to, that the world was going to come to an end because we're increasing hours. But the sun rose the next day, and we're turning out some of the finest police officers in the country. What we're doing today is trying to keep it at 21. I know it's a difficult vote for you. I know it's a difficult vote for some of you. I know you've spoken with your law enforcement heads in some of these departments. I have. I've spoken with them, and the ones I've spoken to, like my colleague from the 44th, I've spoken to people out of my district. And most of them have said this is a good thing. Now, I'm not going to tell you all of them said that, but most of them said this is a good thing. We need to be doing this. So I would appreciate you voting with me against this amendment. Thank you very much.
The gentleman with 13th, Delegate Higginbotham, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to thank my friend Delegate Hanna for allowing me to be a co-sponsor on this amendment. I also want to agree with my colleague Delegate Conley that if you're old enough to serve in the military at 18, certainly you can be a law enforcement officer for a municipality. One thing that Delegate Hanna and I have in common is we were under the age of 21 when we came here to the legislature. I was 19 when I won my first election. So I just want to make one point. If Delegate Hanna and I were old enough to make the law at this age, certainly we're old enough to enforce the law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman with 20th, Delegate Brown, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just real briefly, I'll rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. And let me give you just a couple real-life applications of how this will affect the smaller municipalities. Outside of being a delegate and having a private practice as a lawyer, I'm also the municipal attorney for the city of Williamson. We had a municipal meeting last night, and the chief of police came in. We're trying to hire one person to fill a vacancy. He said, I've got a list of people here. They're 19 and 20 years old. I think they're really well qualified, though, and will make good officers. You know, if this amendment doesn't pass, our smaller municipalities are going to have a really tough time fielding some good officers. And lastly, I'll tell you to consider this. If the amendment fails and the bill passes tomorrow, you'll pass a bill that contradicts both the municipal and deputy sheriff's civil service provisions in law right now. Both of those statutes require the age range from 18 to 35. So if this bill's passed, you'll have 2 sets of standards depending on what you're looking at. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 63rd, Delegate Hardy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd rise to speak to this amendment, and my friend from Nicholas understands how hard a floor amendment is to get. They're tough, they don't come easy. And I have all the respect in the world from my great friend from the 6th. I just want to tell you a little bit about my experience. So I was a police officer when I was 19 years old. I was a military police officer, trained, through the military in a larger structure, which I understand is more of a structured type system. But I will tell you, when I went in the military, the person that I went in the military as and the person that I came out of was a very different person. And I feel that if we sent these younger men to these academies, or women to these academies, that they could receive the training that they need, and we could probably have, we could have some very effective 18, 19, and 20-year-old police officers. And I do feel that in some of our smaller communities, this may be a benefit to some of our smaller, more rural communities that are having trouble hiring police officers. So I think with the proper training, and also understand, every 18 and 19-year-old person are very different. There are some that are very more mature than others, and some, that carry responsibility better. So I rise in favor of the gentleman's amendment, and I think that, I don't know or the reason why we're trying to change this. I don't know why we're trying to move it to 21. I don't know if has there been a problem, is there problems that have been generated? But so I would just rise and speak in favor of the gentleman's motion, and thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the first, Doug McGinn, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the gentleman from Webster's amendment. There's been some anecdotes from the sponsors of this bill, basically just little anecdotes saying they talked to this guy or that guy and says, I agree, we should only have it at 21 and up. So I'll give my own little anecdote. When I was 14 years old, I was following my old man around, and we were at an Air Force base at Fairchild, which is outside Spokane, Washington. And a military police officer who was 18 years old and newly graduated from basic training Air Force Airman with one stripe on a bicycle was patrolling the streets when a mass gunman with essentially an AK-47 walked into the base hospital, shot 26 people, came out, everyone was fleeing from the hospital. This 18-year-old kid got off his bike, went towards the danger, pulled a 9mm Beretta, and shot this gunman from 71 yards away. 18 years old, and I know this guy to this day. We talk all the time. So don't tell me that we need to raise the bar to 21. That's so arbitrary. Okay? Maturity levels differ completely. So you can give anecdotes and say, well, this 18, 19-year-old is just too immature, but this guy is 22. He's definitely more mature. I'd like to know what is the average age of police officers that commit brutality against citizens? I bet you it's not 18 and 19-year-olds. So I think if you're old enough to serve in the military, you're old enough to go to war for this country, if you're old enough to vote, make all these decisions, you're old enough to be a police officer in this state. I support the gentleman's amendment.
The gentleman from the 55th, Doug Ward, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's hard to follow my colleague from the first, but I do oppose his approach to the arguments that if you're old enough to vote, or if you're old enough to go to war, you should be old enough to be a police officer. The big difference is, and I'm not a psychologist to explain the growth, and I'm sure there's always exceptions. I'm sure there's 16-year-olds out there that are a lot more mature than some 30-year-olds. Closer? Okay, I thought everybody could hear me. The concerns that I have, the folks that are going to the military, and I'm not understating or saying that their efforts and bravery aren't appreciated and sometimes do make headlines. Most of the soldiers that are going in as 18-year-olds are following orders. They go there, and for much of their growth in the military, at some point they will be giving commands. The bread and butter of law enforcement is entirely tied to our liberties. The law enforcement officers have powers of arrest, search, and seizures. Those are all things that it's not simply you're 18 years old, there's an adversary on the battlefield, neutralize that adversary. We're expecting our officers to mediate neighbor disputes and to have a better understanding. And again, I'm not putting a blanket suggestion that somebody under the age of 21 doesn't have what it takes, but the time for flexibility, as my colleague explained, for municipalities and for sheriffs and other than state police, the time when law enforcement has been under the most scrutiny and get baited into any number of situations where they're going to be subject to any manner of disrespectful and people that are just trying to poke and prod. I see the efforts to raise the standards are going hand in hand with raising the age, and for that reason I would urge rejection of my colleague's amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 35th, Delegate Capito, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We debated this very amendment in committee, had a nice, robust debate, had several witnesses spoke to it. We had sheriff representatives from West Virginia Sheriff's Association, I believe, and also from the state police. And I think this is a good debate to have. But I don't think there's anything wrong, especially in the times that we're living right now, to be proactive about how we view law enforcement. I think that's exactly what this bill does. It takes a proactive approach. I've heard arguments that may allude to why are we trying to fix something that's not broken? I would suggest that our law enforcement system's not broke, but there's nothing wrong with taking a second look, improving upon what we already have. And I hope everybody would agree here that we have the best state police in the country. We have the best state police in the country, and they've set a standard out that's proved them to be the best. And so what we're doing is we're taking a framework that has been very successful for our state police, and we're applying it to other law enforcement in West Virginia. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I urge rejection of the gentleman's amendment. I stand in opposition to it, not only for myself, but in defense of our committee's deliberation and our rejection of it as well. Thank you.
Gentleman, the 23rd, Delegate Holstein, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just one thing I wanted to add to all the comments that we've heard today is that just because somebody graduates from an academy or applies for a job doesn't mean they're going to be hired necessarily. So I think it should be up to the municipalities to determine if the individual is fit for hiring. We've heard remarks about maturity levels and different things, and I would agree with folks who say that maturity levels are in fact quite different depending on the individual. And I think that should be left up to the municipalities and the folks who will be hiring these people to decide on a case-to-case basis. And I would agree with the delegate from the 13th that, if people in the age of 18 can be elected to office, like myself, I ran at 18, I'm 19 now. If we can pay taxes, if we can participate in every other level of involvement in our nation, when it comes to military service and things like that, then we absolutely should be allowed to participate or to apply for a job as a law enforcement officer, even in a municipality. And like I said earlier, I do think that giving the discretion to the individual is important. And if you think that the person's not equipped for the job, then just don't hire them. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman 28th, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman 44th yield for a question?
Yes.
If your amendment were to be adopted, would it affect the training which is provided through the State Police Academy?
To the extent that I understand your question,
would it be the same training tomorrow if this when this were to be effective?
Yes, sir.
Would it be the same training?
Yes, sir.
So it would be the same training that a 21-year-old would receive today would be the same training that an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old would receive at the effect of this passage.
The gentleman is correct.
Would it affect the manner in which the training is delivered?
No, sir.
It would not. Are you of the opinion that through the natural progression as we age that we just can't help but mature? So that perhaps when you're 18, you're perhaps marginally less mature than when you're 21. Would you agree that maybe that's true?
I would to an extent. I believe that experience plays a part, but I mean, I know immature people over and under the age of 21.
Right. So given that logic, then one is likely more mature at 25 than they are at 21, or 40 than they are at 21.
Yes, I could agree.
So 21 is an arbitrary position to take.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, I would just like to add that I support the gentleman's amendment. I believe that 21 to be an arbitrary age. I myself was 20 years old and serving in the deserts of Kuwait, and I feel like arbitrarily I was capable of serving there, and I believe arbitrarily a 20-year-old is capable of serving in our municipal and county police office agencies, and I would urge adoption of the amendment.
The gentleman to the 16th, Second Hornbuckle, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to rise today to first and foremost thank the lead sponsor of this bill. Appreciate your efforts in trying to enhance standards, and as you spoke about, you spoke to lots of people about police reform and just making things better. Appreciate that. I also want to thank the sponsors of this amendment, as I think it's done in good faith, and I know that personally, I know our sheriff and chief back home are in favor of it. And I just want to say I appreciate all of you all. This is what democracy looks like. We're having civil debate about a very, very important issue. And I would also say that what we're doing here today, and no matter how you go, and I've been talking to the gentleman from the 17th, already I've changed my mind twice. I've literally already changed my mind twice because there's been so much good to come out of this debate. But what I will also say is that, and just like the gentleman who's the lead sponsor of this bill, oftentimes in West Virginia, we're a little weary of change. And too often, sometimes we use our beloved law enforcement for whatever our personal reason is. We play with them too much. And on this important matter, I would also submit to you that we just need to make sure that we have all stakeholders when we're talking about this. Because yes, and the people back home know me, been working hand in hand with our law enforcement, love them. But everything still isn't right for everybody. And so when we talk about 21, originally I'm thinking, yeah, extra little bit of maturity would help in certain situations. But then as the gentleman from the first put it, it's an arbitrary number, and I get that. And so regardless of how I vote on this amendment, I would just ask of this body to be open to the other facets of this issue to make sure that we're heading in the right direction, because we do have wonderful law enforcement. But it's just like anything in life, whether we're legislators, teachers, ball players, doctors, you can always strive to be better. And so I just want to leave that upon you all today to make sure in this very important topic that we're giving it genuine thought, genuine debate, other bills, to make sure that this is great for everyone. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 46th, Second Burkhammer, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Can you hear me over there?
Yeah.
All right, so do you know how long the State Police Academy that we're talking about here lasts?
I'm sorry, I actually didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Do you know how long the academy and this training lasts within this bill?
Yes, it varies depending on whether you're going to become a city cop or a state police officer. I may be mistaken. The gentleman from the 6th could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 6 months for city and 11 months for state. 16 weeks for basic officer.
All right, 16 weeks. And so the way the bill is wrote up, that this 18-year-old in your amendment would be hired, and he would not be unsupervised until he completed this 16-week academy. Is that correct?
Under this bill, and with a little latitude, Mr. Speaker, I would say that I do oppose the bill in its entirety, but this amendment just lowers the age. But yes, with this bill, it would require that they be supervised, but I would submit to the gentleman that is a hindrance, especially for our rural areas. I mean, with a police force of 3 or 4 people, it's pretty impossible to have round-clock supervision.
All right, so, but there's no minimum on the time of being hired to the time that you go to the academy. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so this 18-year-old could be hired, worked 30 days supervised, participate in a 16-week academy, and then upon that he would be certified, and we would then allow him to work unsupervised as an officer. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so I would assume at that time he's still 18 years old, working in a rural community. As we've talked about these municipalities and these counties, 18, working alone, unsupervised by himself. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can I speak to the bill?
Gentleman is recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just oppose that. I just think that that's asking a lot of an 18-year-old, and that's not speaking ill of them. There are some that are an exception, but I would say probably the rule is that's asking a lot of an 18-year-old to work alone. Yeah, he's went through the training. He's had 30 days supervised, and now we've turned him loose on a night shift by himself to answer my call or your call. And I think that's just asking a lot. And I think to move it to 21, because what 21 would then do is this officer could still be hired at the age of 19. He could work a year supervised. He turn 20 in that supervision. He could then attend that 16 weeks, and he could turn 21 on the day of his graduation, and we would turn him loose. And I agree with that. He's got a year under his belt. At that point, he's got maturity under his belt, and I feel a lot more confident and a lot more safe about him answering my call in the middle of the night. And so I oppose it, though I respect the 18-year-olds. I respect the gentleman for doing it. I just ask for its rejection. Thank you.
Gentleman the 14th, Tackett Walmsley is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the bill. Like my friend from the 632nd and the 1st, at 18 years old, I stood a post in a foreign country with a foreign national in a language I didn't speak. I did this night shift, 24 hours a day, for 6 months. I stand here today as a result. I also have the unique experience. I spent 4 years recruiting 4,400 of West Virginia's finest, 18 to 21-year-olds. I've seen every person from every county that wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps. These are our finest. We should let them serve. Thank you.
The gentleman the 16th, Tackett Linville is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today after a lot of debate, and I've got immense respect for the gentleman from the 6th, for every member here who has served as a police officer. But I'm reminded of a phrase that was said to me long ago when I first was elected, and that was, do not let perfect be the enemy of good. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good. And unfortunately, we're not in a perfect situation. We don't have enough police officers. We don't have enough police officers to uphold the laws that we've written. And I think it would be a perfect world if we had enough people to come before us and apply for these jobs at 25 or 30 years old, who were perfectly physically fit, who were perfect individuals in the community. Unfortunately, where we're at right now is the city of Huntington, I believe, is down 15 cops from what they're budgeted. They're offering $10,000 signing bonuses, so to anyone listening at home, you can make an additional $10,000 if you were to sign up to be a cop in Huntington. But we don't have enough. And what would be perfect is safer streets, safer communities for our residents. And I cannot, in good conscience, allow perfect to be the enemy of good. And what would be good?
our safer streets and our laws being upheld by people willing to do so. Cops have had a difficult time over the last long period of time. There's been police reform at every possible angle, and much like us, they're about 10 seconds away from being on CNN at any given time. Folks, it's a hard job, but if they're willing to sign up to do it, I've got to support this amendment.
The gentleman to the 16th, Mant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to stretch my legs in support of the gentleman from the 44th on the amendment. Now, I have extreme respect for Delegate Kelly and for Delegate Hott, for everybody in here. Again, we have put emphasis on an arbitrary number, 21, 18, 19. I spoke with a couple of our Huntington City officers this morning. An example that was given to me was our police department just laid off an officer that was 23 and a graduate of the State Police Academy. He realized the job wasn't for him. His maturity level was not there. But in addition, they kept two 19-year-olds that were doing much better than the graduate from the State Police Academy. Now, we can put that into anything. We can have a high school degree, and there were some that were more intelligent than us in other things and gifted in other things than some others. So to me, it depends on the individual, not the age. In my business, I've seen a lot of people that I've put as a shift leader or a crew leader. It's an entry-level job, but they're learning. They're more mature. They can handle different personalities. And I've had 24 and 25-year-olds that aren't near as mature or able to handle different personalities than some others that I chose. So for us to take the initiative and say it has to be 21 and not allow police departments to say, hey, you're going to go through an interview, you're going to go through training, and there's going to be a training time, and if you make it, fantastic, you make it. If you don't, we're going to need to move forward, and they go to the next person. But I think it gives a little bit of, or a whole lot of option, especially right now when we are low on officers, and I'm speaking of Huntington specifically, and we have put a lot of emphasis on the importance of a degree or a four-year degree. Some people are not cut out for school, but they are cut out for this type of job, whether it's in the fire department, EMS, law enforcement, and I just think that the amendment is a good one, and I am in support of that amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 19th, Griffith, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also speak in support of the amendment. I think one of the things chronological age is not as important to me as a psychological screening to know that the candidate for this job can handle it emotionally and make right decisions. And I would urge us emphasizing more a psychological screening for any candidate to make sure that they are of the material for this very difficult job. But I do support the amendment. Thank you.
Lady in the 51st, Second Walker, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, colleagues. I didn't think I was going to speak on this. Some of you didn't think that I was going to speak on this. But let's talk about it. Age, maturity, protection, qualification, concepts, division, standing as the only black woman among the 100 of you is not a decisive concept. But I can tell you that it is my younger colleagues that has been more open It has been the younger law enforcement agents who I call upon a lot that are so respectful. Now, despite of what you think of me and what you've said about me, and that you feel that it's funny that I have to wear body armor to come and serve the people, that's for another conversation, so I'll keep it here. I support the gentlemen from the 44th Amendment. I see you, the gentleman from the 23rd. Also the gentleman from the 11th. Also whatever district that Delegate Higginbotham is from. I know what it feels like to be disrespected and to say that you're not mature enough and you don't qualify. They have the right to vote. They have the right to fight for our freedoms and choice. Who are we to set more boundaries? Turn loose. We turn loose many when we have younger children taking care of their siblings because there is a parent working. We turn loose many when we have veterans coming back home with no health care or mental health. So we turn loose a lot within the borders of this state. We turn loose physicians to infect our streets with pills. So please turn loose and vote green so we can have everyone who wants to pursue a career in law enforcement, that we don't discriminate or hold any prejudice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The lady from the 41st, Doug Tully, is recognized.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to urge rejection of the amendment. If you'll notice, I feel like I have the safest seat in the House given who I'm surrounded by. I have the gentleman from the 6th to my left. I have my esteemed colleague from the 55th just behind me. And then over my left shoulder, you'll notice I have my another esteemed colleague from the 13th. And what they all have in common is that they've worn the uniform and they know. They are all on these bills, they are on this bill as a sponsor. And I trust my experts. I also took the opportunity, like my colleague from the 44th, to reach out to the chief of police in the largest municipality in my district. This is someone who started as a police officer at age 20 and is now 53. And what he told me was, in this day age, and considering the generational differences, he does believe that they need to be 21 to serve. So I urge rejection of the gentleman's amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 25th, Doug Painter, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we may be splitting hairs a little bit here, but that's what we do. Age 18, age 21, it don't matter, because at that age, 90% haven't even comprehended what the word maturity means yet, so just support the amendment.
The gentleman of the 42nd, Doug Longenacre, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This has been a lively debate. I just want to remind the members that a couple years ago we heard from the Sheriff's Association about a bill that they venomously opposed because it would turn West Virginia into the Wild Wild West. Remember that one? I'm still waiting for that Wild West to come, because sometimes I think it's needed. But it has not come yet. Hasn't come yet. So don't really readily rely on everything you read from some association somewhere. Just look around. I will tell you that I have had the honor to serve with 18-year-olds in some of the worst armpits of the world that you can imagine. Where there is no red coats facing off on blue coats where you can readily identify the enemy. It's a 360-degree battlefield, a high-stress situation. I have watched 18 and 19-year-olds keep a calm head and neutralize the situation and regain control of not only a home or a street, but an entire neighborhood on their own. I have also watched 25, 28, 35-year-olds melt like butter under that same stress. I support the gentleman from the 44th Amendment. Let's get this over with so we can go eat. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 53rd, Delegate Jennings is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've switched back and forth, just like my friend over here had said. But actually, I'm an instructor for EMS. And one of the things I look for, first off, 18-year-olds, you can instruct them because they pick it up just like that. They're just out of the learning stage, and it's real easy to teach them. One of the things I've found, not that I've ever been in these situations that often, but when you get into a situation when it overwhelms you, your training is what takes over. And your automatic response, you don't have time to think, you got to do it. And so these young people, when they make it through the academy, that's what'll take over when the chips are down. They have to, you don't have time to sit there and think about what you're going to do. You just do it, and that's from training. And so I support the gentleman's motion. Thank you.
Do the sponsors wish to close debate on the amendment? Gentleman from the 44th to close debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be brief. I don't want to belabor the point anymore, and I think everybody's made some pretty good points, but there's a proviso that allows the hiring agency may set higher minimum standards as it considers necessary for employment. So, I mean, there's nothing that says that counties, municipalities can't already raise the age if they want to. And we just need to be able to give them that flexibility and then trust the interviewers. Trust what those communities need. There's two ways to look at it. You can look at it from a hiring perspective of we're only limiting the amount of police officers, certified police officers I might add, that we can have patrolling in our communities. And you can look at it from an age perspective and a maturity perspective. You can be 18 and you can serve your country in the military. You can serve your state in this House, but under this bill, you cannot serve your city as a city police officer. I would urge adoption of the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Roll call vote is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will, per the machine, has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there are 76 ayes, 20 nays, 4 members absent, not voting. The majority having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? No. If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 2969, to clarify the procedures for the sale and operation of a municipally owned toll bridge by a private toll transportation facility.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Steele moves to amend the bill. This is HFA Steele 3-12, number 1.
Are there objections to having the amendment explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman from the 29th, Delegate Steele, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The proposed amendment is the result of receiving information that language relating to a private company entering into agreements with the West Virginia Parkways Authority for electronic toll collections is not necessary. The amendment simply removes language relating to agreements to avoid confusion. It turns out you don't need an actual agreement with Parkways to use the Easy Pass system. This bill arms no 18-year-olds, puts them through academies, or gives them employment. It simply takes out language we didn't need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Is there debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2972, allowing a person to manufacture a stated amount of alcoholic liquor for personal consumption.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
House Bill 2379, make criminal invasion of privacy a felony.
The bill will be advanced.
Committees House Bill 2493, providing valuation limitations for coal property taxation and clarifying the penalties for non-filers.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2776, creating the Air Ambulance Patient Protection Act.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2888, relating to when contentions can be revived based on forensic scientific evidence that was not available at time of conviction.
The bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, Delegate Ellington, Jay Kelly, and Bruce.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? If not, leaves of absences shall be granted. Introduction of guests. Miscellaneous business. If not, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move we adjourn until 11 a.m. Monday, March 15th, subject to announcements.
Lady from the 49th moves that subject to announcements. The House stand adjourned until 11 o'clock on Monday. Are there announcements? Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Rules will meet at 10:45 Monday, March 15th in the House Education Committee room.
Gentleman the 16th, Doug Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will not reconvene following floor session. Everybody have a great weekend.
Gentleman 32nd, Doug Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Judiciary will not meet this afternoon nor Monday morning. We will make further announcement on the floor session Monday.
The gentleman 56, Doug Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind that all bill requests need to be in bill drafting pre-approved by close of business today.
The gentleman the 15th, Doug Foster, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Government Organization Committee will meet Monday, March 15th at 1 p.m. in the Government Organization Committee room.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question is on the motion that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. Monday. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned at 11 a.m. on Monday.